Today's story is another unsolved case. A disappearance in the middle of the night, and a drug-addicted couple and a mother with no answers.
Welcome back. We cover dark and disturbing and sometimes really sad subjects, but every now and then add a little humor. If you're a fan of that, support the channel. Comment, subscribe, maybe leave a like. If you hit the like button 3 to 5 times, it's still technically a like. Question for the comments: what's one thing as a kid that kept you up in the night? Heather Kullorn was a student at Blow Middle School in St. Louis, Missouri. I went to St. Louis once during COVID times. Drove right through. Couldn't find a public restroom. There was police everywhere. It was like 2 a.m. and we weren't stopping. So we were walking around, me, my girlfriend at the time, and her 2 brothers. It was crazy because I had overheard a cop saying that there had been 20 people that had gotten shot that night. We just happened to be driving right through at this time, right after it went down. All the gas stations had broken glass in them.
Stick to the story.
All right. Heather Kullorn was staying with Dana Madden and Christopher Herbert. These were some friends of her parents. She was only 11 or 12 at this time, and all alone in the house babysitting the couple's 2-month-old. I'm pretty sure there were scary movies and serial murder films out at this time. Definitely had that babysitter that stays home in a big house in the middle of the night, and so, those don't usually end well. It was 1999, and she was just trying to make a little money. If you've ever done babysitting gigs, you know it's 100% tax-free money. Surely not the most high-paying, but if you're 11 to 14 years old, $20 or so for watching a baby sleep in the night, it's easy decision. But couples going out at night, leaving their 2-month-old and another child, I get it, you need a break, but do you really need to go get drunk and leave a child with a child? They just come home like, what? I didn't know someone got kidnapped. We were just out recapturing our youth. Play a damn board game or just have friends over with the kid.
Stick to the damn script.
Hey man, this is my show. All right. It's our show, but just let me talk, okay? Deep into the night, into the early morning hours, neighbors began to hear these uncontrollable screams coming from the apartment from what sounded like a very young child, a baby. When they approach to investigate, the door is unlocked, and they are perplexed by what they find. Heather Kullorn is 12 years old, and she lives with her brother Matthew, who's 14, and her mother Christine. Heather has become rebellious within the last few months, as preteen girls do. Some simply throw out the occasional lie, or basically don't really tell their parents where they're going, or they stay out too late. You know the sort of thing. But Heather was actually doing more than someone like her age should be doing. She was dipping into far more unhealthy behaviors for someone her age. Now, granted, it's more than okay for children to sort of step out bounds of, their relationship with their parents. If there isn't that sense of adventure when they are young and exploring, it's sort of to their detriment. And when they end up growing up, that's when they develop this rebellious phase as a teenager. Heather began to hang around other misfits her age and even older, and she started smoking cigarettes, trying all kinds of different things. But mainly she was just experimenting with cigarettes. The sweet nicotine. And whatever you may think or do, smoking is just not good for your health. Especially if you're kissing someone. That shit's actually fucking disgusting. If you're kissing someone and they smoke but you don't. Heather had also shaven off her eyebrows in some sort of beauty incident. Again, experimenting, trying to find an identity. Her father was already out of the picture, which didn't help the situation. Her mother had no idea what to do with her. She had no understanding of how to get Heather to listen, so she sort of let her go about her business on her own. But something did eventually bring the two together more. In a rather unfortunate but necessary way. Heather was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and she needed regular insulin shots, about 4 a day. This brought out the caregiver in her mother and brought them closer together. This is around the time that Heather sort of realized that her mother just wants the best for her. It doesn't matter what her mother has done, how her parents have messed up. She sort of realizes this is who's taking care of her, so she should probably listen to her mother on more things. She feels now that she can be a little bit more open and honest with her mother. People tend to have trouble identifying with their children, especially if they are a single parent. It's tough to work all day, to provide, and then be able to discuss the problems with your kids and be able to actually make a change or actually help them. Sugared foods and water would help Heather for a little while, but she would fall into a diabetic coma if she didn't get her insulin shots. Heather always loved babies, and she wanted to get a job in babysitting to earn a little bit more money. She wanted to get her mother and her brother Christmas presents, and she thought this would be a good way to do this. So in 1999, she began working for Dana and Christopher. At first, it was a few times a week thing, and then she became a little bit more consistent with it over time. And as she started to develop a relationship with these people, she sort of noticed their family structure and she liked it. It was almost as if Dana and Christopher were parents to her. They were a home away from home. She would still have issues with her mother and they would fight. This caused her to actually move in with Dana and Christopher for a month. So in June, she moved into their house and continued to babysit, this time babysitting for longer and more consistent, which made her a little bit more money. Dana is 23 years old and still fairly young. She is a new mother. And she took a liking to Heather as a little baby sister or a daughter. And Chris, 34 years old, was the closest thing that she had to a father at this point. One night, when the couple went out, it felt like any other night. As the neighbors open the apartment door at 4 a.m., they find the 2-month-old baby girl crying, face down on the floor. They call out to Heather, and they search frantically in all corners of the apartment, and they find nothing. As they're searching, they notice there is blood on the couch. They search around the apartment. Still, they find nothing. Initially, everyone believed the couple was out on a date. But it turns out that Dana was actually scheduled to work a late night shift at the convenience store a few blocks down. And on July 15th, the night of the disappearance, Dana left the apartment around 10 p.m. Christopher was already gone, and by the time he gets back, it is 4 a.m. Approaching the apartment, after all the neighbors have already entered, Christopher calls Dana, and then Dana calls the police. Authorities finally happen upon the crime scene at 5 a.m. An extensive search ensues. Dozens of interviews of nearby residents take place. Many report the sounds of the baby crying. All very similar reports, similar accounts, similar times. Nothing really standing out except one. A neighbor had been walking his dog at exactly 2 a.m. that morning. He says he witnessed a large man carrying a child over his shoulder out of the apartment. Her upper body was covered, her legs and bare feet exposed. It was some sort of blanket that was covering just her upper body. The man had not been wearing his glasses, and he couldn't see that clearly. But I'm hearing this and I'm thinking, you're driving on the road, right? Let's say you see something out of the corner of your eye and you believe it's a person, but you only have a few seconds to determine this. And you're not trying to run them over, right? So you slow down, or you try to overt. You try to move away from hitting them, right? You don't simply speed up, unless you're crazy as fuck, right? You don't speed up and try to hit the thing. If you believe it's something, you try to move, or you slow down, right? If he believed that it was a person kidnapping a child, and he's legally blind, and he can barely see it, why not call the cops? I know a lot of people are afraid of being in other people's business, but if something feels suspicious, it's probably a better idea to call the cops, because we have instincts in us that tell us when something's wrong. The blood samples on the couch match Heather's. The police immediately come up with suspects. But this case actually reveals another level of the underworld that might give insight onto what happened to Heather. Authorities believe that Heather did not leave on her own accord. They believe that this was someone that she knew, someone that the couple knew, or someone that the family had regularly allowed or had contact with, because there didn't seem to be any forced entry. As police investigate the building, they discover a methamphetamine kitchen in the garage. You see, that garage was used by Christopher and Mike Mason. Now, Mike Mason lived across the street, and he worked on construction on a apartment building that was being built. He occasionally came over and offered jobs to Christopher as a handyman. So they basically worked together. They'd use this bit of money that they make from being handymen to aid in their meth business. True entrepreneur businessmen using a job and then redistributing that income in order to fund their personal business. It now became clear that Christopher, the guy who was nowhere to be found during this disappearance, the guy who's a new father, the man who took this girl in, was part of the local drug scene. Now, this investigation took a quick turn into the dark underbelly of the Missouri methamphetamine drug ring. This extremely powerful stimulant, which can be smoked, injected, snorted, or eaten, produces a rapid and intense high that's brief enough to keep users coming back for more. The result is a strong addiction and days-long binges, encouraged by the development of tolerance that makes meth users require more and more of the drug over time. In 2013, more than 500,000 Americans reported using meth within the past month, and the DEA has seized more than 1,000 kilos of meth in the United States every year since 1997. This highly addictive drug also poses a heavy risk of damaging one's health in a variety of ways. The effects of meth can impact several crucial organ systems and cause long-term harm to the body. And the sharing of needles sometimes used for the injection of meth presents even greater dangers. Meth users face an elevated risk of heart disease, stroke, liver damage, immune suppression, and even Parkinson's disease. And these conditions can be potentially fatal. Make no mistake, chronic meth abuse can have a permanent impact on a person's health, even after quitting. At first, Christopher claims to the police that he had just been out. He was partying with friends at the time of Heather's disappearance, which isn't even a good excuse on its own. But eventually, he has to come clean and tell them that he was actually manufacturing meth with a friend down by the Mississippi River. Either way, he's always maintained innocence in this case. The next thing police do is search his car, but they find nothing. The main theory was that she had been kidnapped for simply witnessing the use of the drugs. Being around these sorts of people growing up from time to time, for me, I didn't believe this theory when I heard it, because it's very difficult to hide things from kids, especially if they're paying attention. They have most of the time to sit around and speculate and think about things. Especially if Heather is living with these people, there is no way that they would be able to hide this. Heather could have potentially been told to keep quiet. She could have been told to keep quiet about the production. She could have threatened to tell authorities about what she has seen And this could have led to her being kidnapped and murdered or still remain missing. She could have wanted to try the drugs as well. She could have wandered into the lab at some point and witnessed all this. From what I know about these types of people, although meth users are not all the same, the drug can put you in a hallucinogenic state of mind. And these types of people keep the same type of dangerous company. Heather's parents could have been users, as this couple was a friend of her mother's. Everyone knows everyone. Information doesn't stay in one place. A lot of these people have a tough time keeping their mouths shut. Often the motive when it comes to drugs, of someone kidnapping someone, is somebody owes someone money or drugs, whatever it may be. Someone owes something to someone. It could be that they were using Heather for leverage and she fought back, or they took Heather and she didn't have her insulin, so she fell into a coma, and whoever had kidnapped her thought she died, and so they got rid of the body. It could also be that Heather was kidnapped and used and abused for some sort of sex trafficking, anything like that. And also, given the situation that she might need insulin, she fell into a coma and this person got rid of her. Mike Mason, the man who had helped Christopher develop the methamphetamine, had these 2 tow chains in his car. And on the same night that Heather goes missing, his car gets broken into and they steal his tow chains. So he tells police that he believes that whoever kidnapped Heather probably took those 2. They used those to weigh her down in the Mississippi River. This is suggesting still that the person that did this knows all of them. They know Heather, they know Christine, they know Mike, they know Chris, because if something went missing from his car and he's not involved, then they had to have known that he left his car unlocked. Or somehow he's not saying something. He knows more than he's leading on. When the police search the Mississippi River, they find nothing. Now, they didn't search all of it, because some parts of the river, for their team, it's dangerous to search, but from what they have searched, they hadn't found anything. And this could all be a distraction. This could all be a cover-up. He could have led police to the Mississippi River so that they were looking elsewhere as her body was taken elsewhere. Both Mike and Christopher are charged on federal drug charges in the 2000s. Several hours before Heather went missing, a couple had gone through town and had actually stopped at the apartment to pick up some methamphetamine supplies. They were also questioned and searched, and nothing came up from them, and they were let go. At some point, though, authorities determined a suspect, but all they ever told the media was that they were never going to release the identity of the suspect. More importantly, though, Heather has never been found and is still missing to this day. This is what Heather could potentially look like as a 25-year-old, and she would be in her mid-30s now. In April of 2000, Christine went to Dana's workplace, and the two had a crazy confrontation. Remember, Dana was the last person to see Heather, besides the 2-month-old baby. And the 2-month-old baby was questioned by police, and also no help, right? And was ruled out.
Stop messing around. This is serious.
So Dana was the last functioning human to see Heather. Now Christine goes ballistic. She charges into this business with a baseball bat. She's swinging and screaming and pleading for answers, but at the same time trying to land a strike on Christine. She's so frantic, it's like she was trying to decapitate this woman. She was certain that the couple had been harboring more information about her daughter's whereabouts, and thought the only thing to do at this point was to take matter into her own hands. It makes sense to me, because a determined parent will fight to the very end. Police have multiple cases to deal with, and sometimes you'll even have police corruption, and they won't continue to work on this case as much as someone who would be the parent. They would be determined to find their child. And sitting back and doing nothing would be the hardest thing. Often police will tell people to sit back because they don't want them getting harmed as well. So, but Christine definitely, she didn't care about this. All she wanted was her daughter to be home and safe. Or at least some sort of closure. Christine, in 2017, dies without ever knowing what happened to her daughter. And in her obituary, it states that she is survived by both her son Matthew and her daughter Heather.